Have you ever felt this way? You catch someone's gaze, but the moment you look back, they quickly turn away. That brief moment, just a few seconds, leaves you flustered for the entire day. No words are spoken, no confessions, no obvious gestures, just a look, a blink that lingers slightly longer than usual. And yet, it feels like something deeper is unfolding beneath the surface. I still remember clearly the first time it happened to me. It was an autumn afternoon in a cramped little cafe, sunlight streaming through the glass, scattering gold across the worn wooden table. He sat across from me, busy with his laptop. I wasn't paying attention until I happened to glance up and caught him looking at me. It wasn't teasing. It wasn't casual curiosity. It was something else deeper, slower, like he forgot to pretend to be busy. The moment our eyes met, he looked away awkwardly, pretending he had just thought of something important on his screen. But I knew that moment was real. Later on, during our short conversations, I noticed his voice changed. Normally, he spoke fast, with a bit of dryness, but when he directed his words toward me, his voice slowed down, softened, and there were unfamiliar pauses, as if he were searching for the right words or trying to hide something. You might call it subtle. You might think I imagined it. But here's the truth, our hearts often hear what our ears don't. You see, we humans are masters at hiding with reason. Words can be chosen carefully. Gestures can be calculated. But the unconscious doesn't lie. It leaks out through the eyes, through the breath, through the slight trembling of a hand when it accidentally brushes against yours. And in those quiet leaks, you realize a decision has already been made at a deeper level. A decision that even he, the man sitting in front of you, may not yet be aware of. This creates a kind of contradiction that leaves you confused. On one hand, you're receiving mixed signal silence, then sudden closeness. When he pulls away, you think you imagined it. When he surprises you with care, you wonder what it all means. But hidden in that uncertainty is a secret. Silence is not always indifference. Sometimes it is the clearest sign of an inner battle where the mind is trying to hold back, but the soul surrendered long ago. I remember once, he told me he wasn't good at expressing emotions. I'm not used to opening up. I think sometimes words only make things messier. I laughed it off, pretended it was no big deal. But deep down, I knew there was truth in what he said. He didn't easily say, "I miss you," or "I care." Instead, he did small things reminding me to dress warmly, checking if I got home safe. And in each of those gestures, there was a quiet, steady affection that spoke louder than 1,000 hollow confessions. The truth is, love rarely arrives with fireworks or grand declarations. It often shows up in quieter ways. It messes with your breathing. It makes you hesitate before sending a message. It makes you smile alone in an empty room. It doesn't shout, but it shifts something inside you. And when someone's soul has chosen you, their world begins to shift slowly, silently, but unmistakably. Someone once told me, what hasn't yet become conscious will appear as destiny. I've thought about that a lot. In love, it feels even more true. Before he even names his feelings, the unconscious has already acted. It adjusts his gaze, alters his tone, pulls him closer to you through random excuses. And if you're observant enough, you'll notice the shift, like a familiar tune you can't quite place, but know you've heard before. I remember one late evening, a group of friends went out to eat. Everyone was laughing, chatting loudly. I sat there, just listening. And in that noisy moment, he turned to me and asked quietly, "Are you tired?" A simple question, but amidst the chaos, it felt like a thread meant only for me. He didn't say it loudly for everyone to hear. He leaned in, lowered his voice, as if the question was never meant for anyone else. And in that moment, I knew some things are chosen by the heart, even if the mind hasn't admitted it yet. Looking back, all those signs feel like stars. Each one might not mean much on its own, but when you place them together, they form a constellation, a clear image in the sky. The problem is, many people miss it because they're looking for dazzling fireworks, while real love glows in quieter ways. Maybe you're in that situation now. The man in front of you doesn't say what you're waiting to hear. He's too quiet, sometimes distant, sometimes suddenly warm. You wonder, should I believe this? Maybe your heart already knows the answer, hidden in the way he looks at you when he thinks you're not watching. That is the language of the soul, a language you don't learn, that can't be faked, and is never wrong. What matters is this: don't be quick to judge silence as indifference. Don't assume distance means apathy. Sometimes, it is simply the space he needs for his mind to catch up with the truth his heart has known all along. And if you're patient enough to hear the subtle signs, you'll see love doesn't always come from logic or words. Sometimes, it appears in the quietest changes of a person. Because the truth is, real love doesn't take the easy road. It doesn't wait until everything is perfect, until both people are confident and sure. It comes first, disrupting plans, shaking down walls. It shows up in a gaze that lingers too long, in a silence that speaks louder than words. And you'll realize sometimes, the soul has already chosen, even if the lips haven't said it yet. So how do you recognize those first signs? How do you tell the difference between a fleeting concern and a quiet touch from the heart? Let me show you the smallest details, the ones that seem meaningless, but are the compass of his heart. There are things you never expect anyone to notice. A small scratch on your hand that you didn't bother to hide. A subtle change in your hairstyle. A quiet sigh you let slip when you thought no one was listening. And yet it's him, the quiet one. The one who often confuses you with vague signals, who notices first. I remember a windy morning. I arrived at work in a bit of a rush, wrapped in an old scarf, my hair slightly messy. I didn't think anyone would care, nor did I want them to. But as we passed each other in the hallway, he tilted his head slightly and said, "You changed how you tied your hair today? Looks different." The comment was light, not flirtatious. But that unexpected attention made me pause, because he was never one for small talk. If he noticed, it meant he genuinely paid attention. Often, people's attention feels like a spotlight, bright, loud, demanding a response. But his attention was more like a small candle, quietly burning, lighting just enough space for you to know you're not invisible. He wasn't doing it to impress, not trying to show the world. He only needed you to notice. And it was that quiet, intentional focus that moved you. Another time, we were chatting casually in a group. Someone asked, "How have you been lately?" I smiled and gave the usual answer, "I'm fine." The conversation moved on, but only he paused, glanced over quickly, and quietly asked, "Are you really fine?" Just 3 words, but the tone was different. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't politeness. It felt like someone gently tapping the mask I was wearing. I was surprised how did he sense the slight drop in my tone when no one else seemed to notice. That's the thing about subtle attention. It doesn't come from surface effort, but from a deeper resonance. When someone has been touched in a real way, they become sensitive to the smallest signals. He remembers things you said long ago, bringing them up when even you had forgotten. He finds you in a crowd without looking for long. He senses your mood shifting sometimes before you realize it yourself. Love at this stage feels like an underground stream. It hasn't broken the surface, hasn't turned into words, but it weaves through the cracks of everyday life. You find him showing up in unexpected places, seemingly by coincidence, yet there's an invisible pull behind it. He asks about a story you left unfinished last time, a detail no one else would care about. He pays attention to what seems insignificant, and in doing so, shows you that you're not invisible. One night, after a group gathering, we all headed home. It was late, the streets were quiet, and everyone went their separate ways. He didn't say he'd walk with me. He didn't offer to take me home. But a few minutes later, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around, and he smiled. "I'm going this way." But it wasn't his way home. I knew that. He didn't explain, and he didn't need to. That quiet presence, that carefully arranged coincidence, spoke louder than any promise. And you begin to see he doesn't need to be with you every day to remember you. Your presence has made its mark on his mind in a different way. You've become part of his inner dialogue. Without trying, he brings you up in conversations, not as a tactic, not on purpose, simply because you're in his thoughts more than he realizes. At a deeper level, this is how the unconscious reveals the truth. A person can hold back words. They can pretend everything is normal, but attention cannot be faked. Because attention is our most precious resource. It comes with time and energy. And when someone gives it to you naturally, it's no longer just courtesy. It's proof that their soul is being drawn to you. I once heard this quote, "We don't really remember what people say, but we remember exactly how they made us feel seen." And subtle attention is what makes you feel seen, even when you're trying to hide. It's not loud or dazzling, but it plants a deep sense of comfort, that in a crowded world, someone is watching you, quietly and consistently. That's why many women get confused. They wait for grand gestures, for public declarations of love. But the real value lies in the small things, the way he lingers 1 second longer in a glance, the way he remembers what you said a month ago, the way his voice softens when he speaks only to you. These things are not accidents. They are the first signs of a love that hasn't yet found its name. I remember once asking him, "How do you remember all these little things?" He laughed and shrugged. "I don't know. They just stick in my mind somehow." That was the most honest answer. He wasn't trying to remember. He didn't make a mental note. But his unconscious kept them. Because to him, you were no longer a stranger. You had become a piece of the picture inside him, a part that, though unnamed by reason, had already been recognized by his heart. The important thing is this: don't underestimate the small details. Don't assume that just because he hasn't said anything, there's nothing there. It's in the quiet gestures, the gentle attention, where the compass of the heart begins to point. Because love doesn't always begin with words. It starts in how we look, how we listen, how we pause just a little longer than usual. And when you recognize that difference, you'll understand this is no longer just polite concern. This is a soul that has started to drift your way. But attention is only the beginning. There's an even deeper sign when he's around you. He no longer wears his usual armor. He becomes clumsy, vulnerable, and so real that even he is surprised by it. There are men out there who walk with confidence, speak with precision, and carry themselves with controlled composure. It's as if they wear an invisible suit of armor, strong, reserved, shielding any trace of vulnerability. And yet, strangely enough, when they're standing in front of you, something begins to change. He is no longer the man who calculates every word, no longer the one who maintains distance with cold detachment. Instead, he becomes clumsy, sometimes awkward, sometimes stumbling over his words, sometimes flashing a goofy smile. Others may not notice, but you see it clearly. He's different when he's with you. And that difference matters. I remember one afternoon he was sitting across from me, telling a rather ordinary story about work. But then, when our eyes met and held for a moment too long, he suddenly lost his train of thought, paused, then chuckled. I forgot what I was saying. The man who is usually sharp and logical, thrown off by a single glance. That's not weakness. That's proof he's been disarmed. When a man is truly moved, he can no longer play his usual role. He lets slip those strange pauses, those imperfect moments. He might crack a clumsy joke or sit quietly beside you without saying a word, yet without leaving either. That awkwardness is real. Because if you didn't matter, he wouldn't care how he appears in front of you. If he wasn't moved, he would have kept his usual cold composure. What's even more telling is this: his silence around you feels different from his usual silence. It's not stiff, not empty. In fact, it's full of meaning. He doesn't feel the need to fill the space with small talk. He can sit next to you in quiet, just listening to the sound of traffic outside or the rhythm of your breathing. And somehow, in that silence, there is a connection deeper than any words could reach. Then, gradually, you notice something else. He starts to care about the little things in your life in a way that's hard to explain. It's not shallow curiosity, but an instinct to protect. You go out late, and a message arrives. Did you get home safe? You wear a light jacket in the cold, and he quietly hands you his scarf. You're tired, and instead of asking questions, he simply places a water bottle by your side. All these things he does naturally, without any explanation. And what matters most is that he doesn't need anyone to witness it. He doesn't wait for loud gratitude. It's not a performance, but a reflex that comes from something deeper. People often confuse care with control. But here, you feel the difference. There's no pressure, no possessiveness, just the sense that he's placing a part of his own balance in your safety, as if he can only be at ease when you're okay. And when affection reaches that point, it has already moved far beyond the game of flirtation or conquest. It becomes an inner bond. I remember one rainy night. I rushed outside without my jacket. When I came back, he didn't scold me, didn't make a scene. He just looked at me, shook his head gently, and walked ahead. As I turned to ask, I saw he had left his only umbrella on the chair I was sitting on. He walked in the rain himself, clothes soaked. I wanted to protest, to scold him, but his eyes said everything. I can get wet, as long as you don't. That is the instinct to protect without the need for promises. You don't hear, "I'll always protect you." You just see him doing it quietly, consistently. And that quietness is what makes it trustworthy. From another perspective, I think of an image Jung once evoked. What the soul loves, it protects. When someone has let another into their inner world, they feel an unspoken responsibility. A responsibility not born of duty, not driven by social roles, but by a natural resonance. As if in his personal map of the world, you've become an anchor point. And so, in the midst of those clumsy gestures, in those meaningful silences, you begin to understand. His unguardedness in front of you is not weakness, but a sign of trust. People only show their imperfect parts when they feel safe. If he becomes different around you, it's not a coincidence. It's his heart acting on its own, before his mind can catch up. Love, at this stage, is like a budding flower. It's not yet dazzling enough for the world to see, but it's beginning to open, revealing its most fragile part. And when you see that in him, understand that you're looking at a truth deeper than 1,000 words. But moments of vulnerability are only the beginning. Real affection is proven by something else: the quiet effort, the way he adjusts his routine, the way he makes space for you in his schedule and in his thoughts. And that is the strongest proof of all. There is something strange about true affection. It doesn't need many words, but you will see its traces in the quiet, consistent efforts. Someone can say, "I care about you," yet never show up when you need them. On the other hand, someone else might not say much, but you notice how he always makes space for you in his life. I still remember one time when he had a suffocatingly busy day. Meetings packed back to back, phones ringing nonstop. I thought for sure he wouldn't have time to think about me. But as I stepped outside, there he was, holding a cup of hot coffee in his hand. "I only have a few minutes, but I thought you might need this." Then he smiled and rushed off. It was just 10 short minutes, but I never forgot it. Not because of the coffee, but because in the middle of a chaotic day, he still thought of me. You see, his effort didn't look grand. He didn't make romantic promises under glowing lights or write long poetic declarations. He simply adjusted the rhythm of his life to make room for you. When he was busy, he didn't disappear. He still sent a short message: "I'll be late. Don't wait up." When he made a mistake, instead of avoiding it, he came back and said, "I'm sorry. I didn't want you to think I didn't care." These small things are the language of mature love. Another time, I casually mentioned how much I liked a little old bookstore on the corner. I said it and forgot about it. But weeks later, as we passed by it together, he stopped and said, half joking, half sincere, "Today I want to see the place you like." I looked at him, surprised. I didn't know he remembered. And then I realized he held on to the things I said, even when I didn't think they mattered. That's how quiet love works. It gathers the fragments and returns them to you like unexpected gifts. He didn't do it to impress. He did it because in his mind, you already held a special place. But it doesn't stop at remembering. He changed how he structured his life. You start to notice. He rearranges his schedule to meet you, even if it's just for a quick lunch. He prioritizes you in small decisions that are, in truth, deeply meaningful. One rainy day, instead of heading straight home, he detoured through a longer route just to drop you off first. Even when exhausted, he still showed up for a few minutes, just so you wouldn't feel forgotten. This is the essence of real affection. Those who don't feel, don't move. When a man is truly moved, he doesn't need a reason to act. He instinctively clears space in his life for you. And that's something that can't be faked. I remember one time he made a small mistake that left me feeling disappointed. I didn't say anything, but maybe he blamed himself. A few days later, he came back with a book I'd once said I loved. "I saw this and thought of you." That was all. No grand apology. The book itself was his way of saying, "I care." What struck me most was how he changed even when I wasn't around. Some days he seemed distant, sitting quietly, as if lost in thought. His friends would say, "Lately, he's been daydreaming a lot." And I understood maybe that was when his mind was filled with thoughts of me. A small detail, a story left untold, a feeling he wanted to share. And so, when we met again, he'd open with, "Oh right, I had something I wanted to tell you." That, more than anything, is the proof you exist in his inner world even when you're not there. He begins collecting experiences, thoughts, joys and worries to save for you. Not everyone earns that place. Only when someone truly steps into your heart do we naturally start doing that. Sometimes he seems offbeat, restless. You look at him, see his wandering eyes, catch him smiling for no reason, and you understand something has changed. He's not the same. Inside him, there's a new current, and it carries your image at a deeper level. I realized this is the moment you become an internal figure within him. Not just someone he sees in real life, but someone who's now a part of his inner map. He didn't place you there intentionally. His unconscious did. And when that happens, it's more powerful than any words, because people can make promises and forget. They can say they love you, but never follow through. But if you show up in someone's thoughts even when they're alone, if they begin to organize their life around your presence, that is love working at its deepest level. In the end, love isn't measured by grand speeches. It's measured by someone's willingness to change their rhythm, to share their space, and to keep you in their orbit. These efforts, though small, build up to undeniable proof. His soul is rearranging itself to make room for you. But these quiet efforts are just the surface of a much deeper shift. When you've truly stepped into his inner world, you'll see another door open. He begins to share things he's never told anyone, reveals his softest parts, and slowly, you become part of the dreams he dares to imagine. There are moments that take you by surprise, not because of anything grand, but because they feel so real. A man who's usually closed off, who keeps his distance, suddenly opens a door no one else has ever seen. He begins to share memories, hidden corners of his heart he's never revealed. And you realize when he chooses to give you the most fragile parts of himself, that's the clearest sign he's allowed you deep into his inner world. I still remember one evening, the air cool and quiet, the two of us sitting on a park bench. There was no plan for a deep conversation, just bits of daily life. Then suddenly, his voice slowed and softened. There are times I feel like I'm not good enough. When I was younger, I did something I still regret. He spoke in broken thoughts, avoiding eye contact. It wasn't a story meant to impress. There was no glory in it, no embellished detail, just a raw truth carrying both fear and shame. And in that moment, I knew he didn't need judgment or solutions. He just needed a place safe enough to set down the weight he'd been carrying for so long. People often think strength means never showing weakness. But in love, real strength is having the courage to take off your armor in front of someone you trust. When he tells you these things, it's not for effect. It's an offering of trust. And that kind of trust doesn't come from logic. It comes from the soul's quiet recognition that says, this one is safe. This one can see me as I truly am. It's not just memories he shares, but also secret dreams, wishes unspoken to anyone else. I remember once he laughed and said, sometimes I imagine living near the ocean, waking up to waves, walking under the palm trees at night. Sounds silly, right? I answered with a smile. But what struck me wasn't the dream itself. It was the way he told it, not like some far-off fantasy, but as if I was already in that picture. He didn't say it outright, but I could hear my presence woven into every word. When a man begins to include you in visions of the future he hasn't even fully realized, it's a clear sign his heart has already chosen. He's no longer thinking in terms of I. Without even noticing, he starts to think we. But this kind of openness isn't just in words. You can see it clearly in how he mirrors your emotions. When you're happy, he smiles softly. His eyes light up as if your joy is contagious. When you're down, he grows uneasy, restless, even when he doesn't know what to say. There was a time I sat in silence, weighed down by my thoughts, not bothering to hide it. He didn't ask, "What's wrong?" like others might. He simply moved closer, gently touched my shoulder, awkward, but determined to stay. And it was that awkwardness that made me believe him. He wasn't trying to play hero. He just wanted to be there, to carry a bit of the heaviness, even if he didn't know how. That's what emotional resonance feels like. It's one of the strongest signs of deep connection. He doesn't have to say a word, but you know your mood has become his. Your joys and sorrows touch him directly, as if the two of you are beating in the same rhythm. What's important to note is that he doesn't do this with everyone. To the outside world, he might still seem cold, composed, unreadable. But with you, he can't hold up that mask. And that difference is your answer. When love reaches that point, it's no longer a game. It's no longer about playing hard to get, or putting on a perfect front to win someone over. It becomes a quiet surrender to the truth that he has allowed you to become part of his inner life. And when someone lets you in that far, love has already begun to reorganize something deep inside. You'll see it clearly when he starts asking your thoughts on decisions that once seemed personal. I'm thinking of switching jobs. What do you think? Or, if I have to be away for a few months, how would you feel about that? These aren't polite questions. He genuinely wants to know what you think, because in his subconscious, he's already added you to the equation of his life. Sometimes it slips out without him even realizing. Like the time he casually said, "Someday, we should go to Europe." I froze. He didn't say, "I want to go." He said, "we." One small word, but it told me everything in his picture of the future. I was already there. He didn't need to plan it out. His unconscious had already drawn the two of us together. On a deeper level, I came to understand, love isn't just about adding someone to your life. It's about opening inner space. A man who's used to a life built around himself begins to make room for someone else, not because he has to, but because his soul wants to. And if you're lucky enough to be in that space, you'll feel it clearly that this is a confirmation greater than any promise, because promises can fade. But when someone shares the deepest parts of himself, memories never told, emotions never acknowledged, and dreams for a future he's just beginning to envision, you've become the witness of his soul. I believe this is the most beautiful stage of love. No need for grand displays, no need for scripted charm, just two people sitting side by side, sometimes in silence, sometimes a little clumsy, but trusting enough to reveal their most honest selves. This is when love shifts from desire to connection. But the story doesn't end there. When he's let you into the most private parts of himself, something even bigger begins to change. His entire world starts to revolve around you. Not with fireworks or fanfare, but with a quiet peace that says he's found home in you. There is a kind of love that doesn't need banners or bold promises, yet you feel it unmistakably. It shows up in small choices, in the way a man instinctively places you as a priority, even when he doesn't say it aloud. And gradually, you realize he doesn't love you as a fleeting attraction. He is making you an essential part of his world, like home. I remember one morning when his work schedule was packed, phones ringing nonstop, emails piling up. I thought there was no way he could make time to see me. But in the middle of a short break, he showed up, sat quietly for a few minutes, placed a small box of pastries on the table, and said, "I have to run. Just wanted to make sure you had breakfast." Then he left just as quickly, not waiting for a thank you. In that moment, I saw something clear. He prioritized me, even when his world was in chaos. This kind of priority doesn't ask for attention. He doesn't need to announce it or let his friends know. It flows quietly, like a steady undercurrent. Maybe he never says, "You matter more than anything." But in reality, you see it in the things he chooses to do. When there are many routes to take, he still chooses the one that passes your favorite street. When time is tight, he still finds a few moments for you. When he's exhausted, instead of disappearing completely, he still sends a short message. "I'm okay. Just wanted you to know." You also start to notice how he naturally syncs with your world. Maybe he never cared for art before, but now he's curious to visit exhibits with you. Maybe he didn't like novels, but now he's asking about the book you're obsessed with. He doesn't lose himself. He still keeps his own world, but he opens the door to yours, as if wanting to understand you from the inside out. Once, I casually talked about my love for jazz. He was a rock guy, rarely strayed from his style, but a few weeks later, while driving, he played a jazz song and smiled. "I listened to this because I remembered you mentioned it." I sat quietly, a strange warmth filling me. Not because he suddenly loved jazz, but because he was willing to step into my world just to be a little closer to me. That's the heart of connection. Not abandoning yourself, but opening up to share. And as two people slowly find common ground in little things, something new emerges, a sense of belonging. Then, you notice something even deeper. He protects you even when you're not around. This isn't always obvious, but you hear about it through passing stories. Someone in the group makes a joking remark about you. He doesn't make a scene or start a fight, but a glance, a subtle shift in tone, or a short reply from him is enough to draw a line. She's not someone you joke about. He doesn't do this to earn points. He doesn't need you to see it. He does it because, deep inside, protecting you has become second nature. A man only defends what he feels, belongs to his heart. If he stands up for you even in your absence, it's proof he sees you as part of himself. Once, I learned this happened. A mutual friend said, "Someone joked about you the other day." He instantly got serious and told them to stop. I listened, speechless. He never mentioned it, never asked for thanks. But in that moment, I understood more about how he loves, not loudly, but with quiet certainty. Real love doesn't need bright lights. It lives in silent moments, in discreet choices. A man who truly loves you doesn't need to say, "I'll always be here." He just shows up. He prioritizes you, protects you, and connects with you in ways that feel effortless. And when you're with him, there's this strange sensation peace. Not fireworks, not fleeting excitement, but a calm that settles deep in your chest, like you can breathe more fully, like all the noise quiets down. That feeling is just like coming home after a long day. And in that moment, you understand home is not a place. Home is the feeling you find when you're with the right person. With him, you become home. He doesn't need to say it. His every action makes it clear. And when that happens, you know love has entered a new chapter. It's no longer a passing thrill, but a deep, enduring bond. And when every sign weaves together into a complete picture, you realize the final truth: he loves you more than he even realizes. No promises needed, no fireworks, just steady presence. That is love before words. There are things you don't need to hear out loud, because you've already felt them. Love is one of those things. It doesn't always arrive wrapped in poetic confessions, nor does it always come with candlelight or romantic settings. Often, it reveals itself through quiet persistence, through small moments that only form a complete picture once they are pieced together. And then one day, you realize he has loved you more than he ever knew. Think back to every sign: the glance that lingered a heartbeat too long, the tone in his voice that changed when speaking only to you, the sudden awkwardness, the armor he usually wore falling away whenever he was near you, the little efforts, the morning coffee, the short message, just so you wouldn't feel forgotten, the rare opening of his heart, memories, fears, dreams he'd never shared with anyone, the emotional sync, how he smiled when you smiled, how he grew restless when you were down, the quiet prioritization, his growing alignment with your world, the protection even when you weren't there. All of it, woven together, forms a truth that can't be denied: his soul has already chosen you. What's striking is that he might not even realize it yet. He might still hesitate, still wrestle with old fears. He might not have found the courage to say the words you've been waiting for, but you've already seen the truth in his actions, in his gaze, in the unspoken choices he makes. And that truth is so clear, you can no longer ignore it. Real love doesn't need spectacle. It doesn't need to conquer or prove itself with grand romantic displays. It lives in quiet presence, in the way a man slowly rearranges his inner world to make space for you. This is love before words. I remember one late night, we sat in the car while rain gently tapped on the windows. No one said a word, just the slow rhythm of the wipers and the sound of our breathing. I looked at him. He stared ahead, unmoving. But I felt it deeply that silence wasn't empty. It was full. He didn't need to say, "I love you." I already knew, because love has its own language, a language without words. Perhaps mature love is no longer about crafting the perfect phrase to win someone over. It's about the courage to show another person your blank spaces, your scars, your softest moments, and still stay. That act of staying through the silence, through the doubts, is the most powerful proof of all. You'll notice that sometimes he pulls away. Sometimes he retreats into silence. But then, like an invisible thread tugging him back, he returns. Even if he takes the long way around, even if he seems off rhythm, he always finds his way back to you. Because once the soul has chosen, the mind simply follows. That's why you shouldn't let the absence of promises confuse you. Promises can fade, but the repeated presence, the quiet priority, the peace you feel when you're with him, those are the markers of real love. And one day, when he finally catches up to what his soul has known all along, the words will come on their own. But even before that moment, you can trust this: he loves you more than he's ready to admit. I think of a quote, "The unconscious doesn't lie." And it's true. You can see love in the unconscious, in the eyes, in the hesitation, in the small changes he doesn't even realize he's made. And when you believe in that, you'll feel a calm settle over you. Love isn't always fireworks. More often, it's a small, patient flame, warm enough to fill a whole room. It doesn't scream for attention. but it stays. It doesn't demand, but it remains. And in that quiet, you find the very thing most people spend a lifetime searching for, a home within someone else's soul. If you've seen him change, if you've watched him rearrange his world, if you've felt him open up and stay, believe it, it's not a coincidence. It's not just friends. It's love, growing inside him even if he hasn't named it yet. And when you feel it too, when your heart responds, you'll understand you're not here by chance. You're standing in front of something rare. A love that doesn't need to be shouted or proven, only lived. And someday, when both of you are brave enough, there won't need to be grand declarations or rehearsed lines. Just a look, a quiet agreement. And in that moment, you'll know this love has been here all along, ever since his eyes lingered that one extra second. True love doesn't always arrive with words. It shows up in presence, in stillness, in the way one soul quietly chooses another. And you, if you're reading this, if your heart sees itself in these words, know this: you've been chosen, even if he hasn't realized it yet. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this story. If this message touched your heart, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss the next journey we take together. Your support means the world to me.